Fourth World Issues Center, connecting community for change.
Anine, bonjour, hello, and welcome back to our listeners. This is your host, Sarah Lewis from the Fourth World Issues Center, also known as KWIC, and this is KWIC Talks with You podcast, where we discuss global issues and our local initiatives that foster equitable and sustainable communities. KWIC is a nonprofit organization that creates change in three main areas: community education, youth and in-school opportunities, and umbrella support for small emerging initiatives. So, my name is Sarah Lewis, and I'm the Digital Communication Specialist here at KWIC. I'm also a poet, a mother, and have participated and helped facilitate some of the workshops. So that's where I'm coming from. I'd like to also start with a land acknowledgement. So before we begin, I want to start this podcast off in a good way to acknowledge the land in which we are situated and recording on, which is Negotiable, also known as Peterborough and the Kawartha area. Negotiable means place at the end of the rapids in Anishinaabemowin, the Anishinaabe language. This is Michisagi Anishinaabeg territory where the Williams Treaties, Treaty 20 was signed. We honor the land, the water, the air, our history, and our treaty relationships, our ancestors and future generations, and the original caretakers of this land as we work towards reconciling our relationships. So, miigwech. This is the second episode within the three-part series that will be looking in more detail at KWIC's latest project, Advancing Gender Equality in Negotiable, Peterborough. So today we're going to be discussing the workshops, which made up the majority of the project, with KWIC's Program and Outreach Coordinator, Shaylin Wabagijig. Shay, would you please introduce yourself to our listeners?
Yes, miigwech. Muting you. So Anin Bojo Kinawia, hello everyone. I'm going to start by introducing myself in the language Anishinaabemowin. So Shaylin Wabagijik Kandishnakas, Nano Debazawin Temiskaming Donjaba, Atek Ndodem, Minjikning Ndonjaba, Munwa no Gojiwanang Ndada. So I said, my name is Shaylin Wabagijik. My family is from Temiskaming First Nation, Algonquin, Anishinaabe, and Caribou Clan. And I grew up in Rama First Nation, Minjikning is also known as, and I was living in Nogojuanong, Peterborough, and coordinating this project. And it's a real pleasure to be coming to you on this podcast. So thanks, Sarah, for setting this up.
Yeah, thanks for being here, Shay. And welcome. So we'll just get it right into the questions. That was a beautiful introduction, by the way. I love hearing introductions in the language and in my own language, both similar to my language. So miigwech for that. So in the first episode, we briefly touched on your role in the project. Could you remind our listeners of this, as well as what this project aims to do as it connects to the Sustainable Development Goals?
Yes, so this project really aims to engage diverse groups of people in 6 different workshop conversations, as you mentioned, to discuss their experiences and perspectives on gender equality. So the workshops included, so the 6 of them were Indigenous leaders, Indigenous women, 2S LGBTQ plus peoples, Black and racialized peoples, New Canadians, and people living with disabilities. So this project was guided by a steering team of gender equality advocates in the community, about 10 of them, and they decided on the focus of each of those workshops and which partner organizations to work with to find people to engage in those workshops, and they serve those communities. So the principles of the project was always to start by centering Indigenous leadership and have that throughout all of the project. And this is essential to achieving gender equality and leaving no one behind and advancing sustainable development in this territory. And the second is leaving no one behind. The acronym is LNOB, and it means to support and empower those who face multiple interconnected forms of disadvantage and discrimination in society. And then the last is intersectionality, and that is a term coined by Kimberly Crenshaw, which refers to where power and privilege comes and collides, and where people face either disadvantage and discrimination, or privilege and advantage. So, and how everyone's experiences is unique in that. And my role as a project coordinator, I led all the project activities with the support of our incredible staff and volunteers, including Sarah. And I coordinated and facilitated the project steering team meetings, the community organization partnerships, and the 6 workshops, and was also responsible for the budget and leading the report writing. And the report writing is currently going on still. That's me.
KWIC. Oh, wow. Yeah, sounds like you and all the team members have a lot on their plate. Such great work being done. So thank you again for that project recap and explaining what you do at KWIC and what you're currently still doing. So this project is based around this concept of gender equality. And so when people think about gender equality, they think of the direct acts and policies of gender equality in other places, such as women's lack of access to education based on their gender. Can you explain what we mean by gender equality locally?
Yes, thank you. So as I said, we're writing a final report, so there's going to be a lot more elaboration in there. But we define gender equality as empowering all genders, people of all genders, to express their gender identity without discrimination and prejudice, and with equitable rights and opportunities. So these gender norms and stereotypes in society really affect everyone, whether we realize it or not. And gender equality is a universal human right, and it's foundational for social justice, healthy, prosperous, safe communities, and to advance all sustainable development goals. So although the Canadian Charter proclaims every individual should be free from discrimination, in practice, certain groups of people are discriminated against every day based on their gender and other intersecting identities. And so we still have a very long way to go locally and nationally and globally, really, to ensure that everyone has equitable rights in practice. So in the workshops, we heard about discrimination in education, healthcare, the workplace, on the sidewalk, or anywhere for certain groups of people. And so being at the intersections of racism, sexism, ableism, homophobia, etc., this creates a lot of barriers and can make you a target and left behind in society. So this is perpetuated by harmful norms, practices, stereotypes, misinformation, etc., that is currently embedded within society, that has been instilled throughout history and needs to be addressed for everyone's safety, to enjoy their rights, freedoms, justice, and for equality to be achieved.
Yeah, I 100% agree. So needed. And yeah, I can definitely attest to that as someone who faces different intersections. And it was very evident and unfortunate that, you know, so many inequalities were experienced by our participants in the workshop. That said, I'm interested to know what guided those responses. So can you tell us a bit more about the workshop discussions, its structure, and what sort of questions were asked of the participants within these workshops?
Yes, thank you. So there was about 6 to 10 participants within each workshop. They were all held virtually on Zoom for 2.5 hours each. And the general structure of the workshops was to begin with a 10-minute context setting presentation. The workshops were facilitated by myself and sometimes one of our KWIC volunteers, William Ward. Shout out to William for his excellent facilitation. And so we would provide a 10-minute context setting presentation to talk about the project, acknowledge the territory, the workshop protocols based on the Anishinaabe 7 sacred grandfather teachings, and orient participants into the virtual space. Then we had an opening circle with an icebreaker question to introduce ourselves. Then the majority of the workshop was for conversations for 20 minutes each to discuss 4 questions. And so they include, what different intersections do you bring to this conversation today? And how do they intersect with your gender? So for example, they can talk about their age, ethnicity, sexual orientation, geography, income, disabilities, language, etc. So what gender means to you and how you experience gender in Nogajumanong is the second question. Third is, what are the gaps to advancing gender equality locally or in society in general? And then what are the foundations of a gender equal community? So envisioning what our community would look like when we achieve gender equality. And so after these discussions, we had a short break, and then we had 2 10-minute presentations on the national and the global context of gender equality as it relates to the focus of the workshop, so as it relates to their communities. And so then we finished with next steps of what they can expect out of the project, what's going to happen next, and finished with a closing circle. So they were amazing, and I just want to say, Chimiigwech, thank you so much to everyone who came to those workshops and shared your valuable experiences and perspectives with us.
Yeah, I'm very lucky to have been included in that. It was a lot. It was a big project, and I'm excited to, see what comes out of this. So a lot of big questions that prompted many thoughtful and inspiring responses, as I recall. And I really appreciate also the integration of the 7 grandfather teachings and basing, the protocols around those teachings. Personally, I think decolonizing and reverting back to the traditional ways of knowing and orienting is key in creating, safe spaces for everyone. So, just moving on to our next question. Since the workshops are done, what were some of the key takeaways and why were these workshops so important?
Decolonize, Miigwech, for bringing that word into the podcast. So my first thought about that question is just that it was so important for participants to come together with people like them to have these conversations. So they acknowledged how grateful they were to connect with their peers and the importance of that safe space to have those discussions with them positioned as the experts of their experiences in the world and sharing what they think that we can do to improve the situation. So a common theme throughout the workshops was they all reported feeling unsafe or unsupported in different community spaces because of their intersecting identities. So all of these experiences and situations have been experienced by other people, and they all shared a common understanding of what each other goes through because of those shared identities. So we can see where these intersections really come together and come to play. But there's many other key takeaways that I'm currently writing up in the final report, trying to summarize and do justice to those workshops. So keep an eye out for that.
Miigwech. It's difficult to even hear about what's happening in the community, but it is the reality, and all the more reason of why this work is so important. So now we have an idea of what work is being done in the community in terms of advancing gender equality. based off of the multitude of workshop discussions that you facilitated, what work do you think still needs to be done in Negosjwanong to advance gender equality?
Yes, so I think that all of these issues that we have been talking about they're all interconnected, and so it's a really much broader problem than locally. So I want to acknowledge that first, because those root causes of gender inequality are so deep and span globally, and they're societal and embedded within our systems and the foundations of them. So a main vein of the work that needs to be done is dismantling or deconstructing or decolonizing gender and the gender binary, which puts people into two categories of male or female, and that can be really harmful to so many people. So there needs to be more work done teaching people about the gender spectrum and redefining our notions of gender, and not equating it to one sex, but the roles and norms within society of identity. And so, yeah, I think it's going to be difficult because of how deep rooted it is, but it's really morally, legally, and just justice, like we have to. So acknowledging it is the first step, and then we can focus on developing those educational resources for the public and in schools. I think more training is needed for staff, for like everyone, like doctors and teachers and all the important roles that people play in society. So, more resources for them and capacity for this issue, and like assessing those structures that are currently in place and how they can be really leaving people behind in society. So, everywhere from education to governance to even just your everyday conversations with people, I think really needs to be looked at and see how we are maybe causing harm. So we need to do more to ensure everyone's safety and rights and liberty of all people.
Yes, I also echo that. It's so important to look at the roots, the larger systems at play when it comes to inequality, and to hold those systems accountable and demand change in educational systems as well in order to achieve that equality. And upon examining that larger system, the capitalist system, the reality is that a lot of people are just trying to survive, to just take care of their families. That work, that paying the bills and providing for family monopolizes a lot of our time, and the energy to demand accountability to these systems and to work towards this change can become challenging and far-fetched even. So a big question of mine, and something that I've been thinking about more recently as well, is how do we keep people caring about issues like gender equality? And would you recommend more workshops such as these ones in Negosjwanong to other places?
Thank you much for this question. Yes, that's so true. And, there's such a bigger, deeper conversation around this question. So I do believe that more work like this is needed. I think we really set the foundation for advancing gender equality locally, and I hope the resources that we create will support that movement locally. And we know that the work we do here in our community ripples out into the world in a good way. So we are contributing to advancing the UN Sustainable Development Goals in the United Nations and around the world. We, share the work that we do. And so, on a bigger scale, that's what the project is doing. And I think as individuals, I totally understand that we can't always be in on every front, and we have to remember to rest. That's what I have to remember, and that there is a lot of people doing this work, and we can support them in doing that work. I didn't know much about gender equality, to be honest, before this project. And now that I've had time to do it, and I've had such an honor being part of this project and learning more. And so I think it's really important to remember that what we do does make a difference, and what we learn and what we know. So I think for individuals out there who want to know what they can do, so firstly, learn more about the spectrum of gender, and be open to broaden your understandings of gender identity in many different worldviews. Then, reflect on your own understanding of gender, and how maybe you might project that into the world, into other people. Then talk about it with people around you if you're safe and able to do that. I think that's really important, keeping that conversation going. And then looking out for gender equality work that's happening around you in your community or online. Then you can engage if you have time and capacity to get involved in some of that work, or at any opportunities in your life where you can make a difference. And then also encouraging others to do the same. And then, reading about the state of gender locally and nationally. So I have 4 resources for you. 2 of them are local, which we have created from this project. So the final report is going to be released April 15th. So look out for that. We will be posting it on our social media and website. And then the Vital Signs report. So the Community Foundation of Greater Peterborough partnered with us to create a Vital Signs report, or we partnered with them. And we shared that on International Women's Day this year, and that's available online on our website. And I will share all these links with you. And then the other national reports that are just incredible, well done, about the state of gender equality is the Equal Futures Network, which they just released a report for 2020 to 2021. They're a new network that started in 2020. So you can see all the great work that's happening there. There's also an online map of all of the organizations and projects and work happening towards gender equality across the country. So you can see their Equal Futures Network map. And then finally, the Vital Signs for the Community Foundation of Canada released 3 reports in 2020 called Peace, Power, and Planet. And they are incredible. That helped me learn a lot about gender equality here in Canada. So I highly recommend looking at those, even if you just skim through it. It's amazing, like beautiful reports, really good work being done. Miigwech for letting me share all of that with you.
No, thank you, Shay. I'm gonna definitely have to check out that CFC Vital Signs report. So many reports, and it's wonderful. I agree. I think there are ripple effects, and whether you think they're small or big, they make an impact, and they do ripple out to the world. And that's important to remember. And I like when you brought up the idea of rest, because also rest is decolonizing. I always appreciated that about the most recent workplaces that I've been in, asking, do you have capacity? And I'm like, do I? I'm like, I don't, and I've never been asked that. And it's just I really appreciate it in a world that's like very like work oriented. We do need time to take rest and to, kind of not take on the world. And there's just so many things happening, and to address those issues such as gender equality when you do have the capacity. So very grateful, and thank you for suggesting or for bringing up all of those online resources. I'm going to have to check them out for myself. But yes, again, to Miigwech Shaylin for sharing what this important project is about, for all of your good work. I know there's a lot of community members in Negotiation Peterborough that are so grateful for you, for KWIC, the advisory committee, and workshop participants who made these workshops possible. Yeah, that's it for this week's episode on KWIC Talks with You. The workshops are done. The key takeaways are gathered. Tune in to our next episode to find out more about the final report that contains all the information gathered from these workshops. We'll also be reviewing next steps and some hopes for the future. So take care. Bama pi gwa min minwa, which means until later. See you again.
KWIC World Issues Center, connecting community for change.